Every animal that Jesse came across on the Infinity Train, he put sunglasses on and named Dracula. With the deer, it at least made sense because of the distinct markings on the lower jaw, but apparently that had nothing to do with Jesse's decision. He just has a weird fixation for the name Dracula, and I was cracking up when we saw Jesse's phone screen. Jesse was concerned when Alan Dracula first fell through the canopy, but he quickly mellows out about the whole situation. Lake, meanwhile, is under the impression that the deer is in peril. Alan Dracula is the first real friendship she's developed with someone. Lake's defensive, independent, and somewhat abrasive personality resulted in her keeping a distance from others up till now, but inversely, that makes the bonds she does manage to form with others much stronger. This illustrates that a strong sense of loyalty is one of Lake's personality traits, and that's established before she even commits to helping Jesse reduce his number. Jesse's actions in the early part of this episode were really interesting. Jesse contemplates leaving the train car when there's a possibility of injuring his weak, squishy body. When I watched this episode for the first time, this scene didn't leave a lasting impression on me, but upon rewatching the show, this brief silent moment is actually rather heavy. All the events in the rest of Book 2 rely on this singular decision of Jesse's. Furthermore, this moment of hesitation provides a lot to analyze. We find out later in the episode that Jesse's flaws include trying to be on good terms with everyone around him to potentially unhealthy extents. He desires to be liked by all. If Jesse is spreading his emotional energy out across a ton of different relationships with various people so that he can be friends with every group, that may limit the intensity of his relationships on an individual basis. When you try to be pals with literally everyone, that may hinder the ability to form deeply close friendships that require time and commitment. And that's my view on why in this scene, Jesse briefly contemplated on moving on to the next train car. What makes psychoanalyzing Jesse in this scene extra fascinating is that these same character traits that limit the intensity of his bond to others, those are the same traits that ultimately compel him to follow Lake down the tree, because he still gets swept up in the flow of others and wants to appease them. And his desire for Lake to like him is ultimately what kickstarts his journey of growth, because up till now, Jesse wasn't learning anything about himself while venturing through the train. So in a weird roundabout way, the same flaws that sometimes jeopardized Jesse, in this case, actually allowed him to travel down the path to work on fixing those flaws. It's really cool how Infinity Train is able to show that personality traits can have positive or negative effects given the circumstances. Depending on the scenario, the traits that are your vice can sometimes still help you out. This show doesn't paint things in just black and white, and that's one of the reasons why I love it so much. As for the living family tree itself, the Gillycuddies and the Trundleshanks, I did not care for them at all. I'm glad they're mostly background decor, quite literally, because I was not invested whatsoever in their antics or their cross-family feud. Cartoons doing the whole yokel thing, even when it's kept to moderate levels, I just never really found it amusing. Although, there are some exceptions to that.
Get 'em! Get 'em!
Now the concept of the tree itself, though, that was pretty neat. A family tree expands as more offspring are produced. This particular tree also expands when there's conflict. So it's a tree that grows from fucking and fighting, and the thought of that made me chuckle quite a bit. But all the really juicy content of this episode is from the friction between Lake and Jesse. After Lake refuses to give Jesse a name to call her,
What is your name?
You won't know me long enough for it to matter.
she begrudgingly picks a temporary nickname when pressured by the Gillycuddies.
Well?
You can call me MT.
Hey, how come they get to...
Have you seen a deer falling through here?
Part of the reason Lake picks something is certainly because she just wants to hurry on and find Alan Dracula already, but I couldn't help read into it a bit more, especially because of Jesse's reaction. That line of dialogue implies something a little more profound than just the surface layer. I think Lake told Jesse the opposite of what she actually feels.
You won't know me long enough for it to matter.
Contrary to that statement, she's willing to throw Wilbur and Sinesta a throwaway name, because as soon as she gets the information she needs, she won't ever see them again. Whereas with Jesse, Lake feels like she already spent enough time with him that she would rather not be remembered by names she doesn't resonate with. She'd prefer to be remembered without a name entirely, rather than with one that doesn't feel true to her when it comes to people she's interacted with for a substantial enough amount of time. Although circumstances do play out such that Jesse also ends up calling her MT, but in a later episode, Lake remains assertive that it's not her name.
It's not my name. I'm just letting you call me that.
Beyond Lake being high-strung, snappy, and abrasive as a defense mechanism to hide how vulnerable and alone she feels, I do think part of her can't help but be envious of Jesse. Based on his demeanor, Jesse can feel at ease anywhere.
Wow, fitting in! What a gift.
Many people Lake comes across, both trained denizens and humans, stare at her.
Yeah, get it out of your system.
I'm sure she can't help but feel out of place, no matter what train car she finds herself in. Mirror entities don't regularly venture through the train after all.
C'est merveilleux! A reflection! I've never seen one of your kind in the prime world.
On top of that, the mirror police are constantly chasing after her to end her life because she refuses to be subjugated by a system that makes her miserable. Lake can't even fathom being comfortable and at ease, like Jesse appears to do effortlessly.
Why are you so mad at me?
Look, it has nothing to do with you. It's just...
Lake doesn't even feel comfortable sharing her backstory. The version she gives Jesse is abstracted to such a degree that it no longer accurately captures Lake's life circumstances, and thus Jesse misjudges her character.
Why would you do that to your friend? That's crazy.
This only causes Lake to further withdraw from opening up about herself. I think if Lake told Jesse the truth straight up, he probably would have been supportive. By skirting around the truth, Lake got the exact result she wanted to avoid, her existence being judged negatively. Lake is afraid, and if that doesn't remind you of Tulip, well, it should.
Because she's afraid. Like me.
Fear is a common symptom running through all the troubled people on the train, it seems. Which, I mean, yeah, fear is the mind killer. I think that's a quote from Dune, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, Lake and Jesse split up for a bit, and I'm really happy that the episode did not mandate a reconciliation between the two tree families. It's really not Jesse's place to be the arbiter of a conflict that's been going on for many generations, and it's naive to think a complete outsider could facilitate a solution to a deeply rooted familial problem. More so, Jesse was clearly more invested in the two families thinking well of him than prioritizing the most fair outcome, assuming there even was such a thing.
Well, I don't want anybody to get mad at me.
This was Jesse's first lesson that generic blanket appeals to empathy and empty platitudes aren't good conflict resolution tools, and both sidesing is a pathetic attempt at diplomacy.
Well, trying to make everyone happy didn't really work out.
Also, like I said earlier, I didn't care for the two tree families anyway, so the less time spent with them, the better as far as I'm concerned. Conveniently, Lake and Jesse end up right back together, and for someone who was uncomfortable with physical contact, Lake sure is pushy. She also lands multiple flicks on Jesse this episode. I guess that repressed physical intimacy of hers might be what leads to these mildly aggressive physical acts. That's my take on it, at least. That is a way emotions are sometimes channeled. I've actually had personal experience with it from both sides. So usually, I'm not a big fan of when two characters who are in conflict are trapped, and in order to escape, they are forced to either work out their issues or set aside their differences. But in this episode, I really didn't mind it that much. For one, what the tree does is distracts the two from their frustration, and thus gives them a chance to cool off, rather than mandating that they resolve their issues. And two, the tree doesn't actually seem to care about sincerity. It takes a fake-it-till-you-make-it approach. I feel this sort of approach facilitates tolerance of the other person more so than acceptance, the latter of which should be much more difficult to develop than merely being thrown into a dangerous situation together. So I was just fine with Lake and Jesse comically complimenting each other through their awkward cooperation. At the base of the tree, we get a callback to something Jesse said earlier in the episode.
You could name the tree after both your families.
And at the ground level, Lake and Jesse finally realize that Alan Dracula did not need saving at all, much to Lake's chagrin. Lake and Jesse issue genuine apologies to each other when the tree inhibiting their movement is no longer even a factor. Well, while Lake's apology is technically genuine, she's still masking her feelings with claims of indifference and ulterior motives because she's too embarrassed to admit that a small part of her might actually want to help Jesse out for his sake. Being candid with others is something Lake is still having difficulty with. Her reluctant acceptance of the deer's name was very cute.
Alan Dracula.
And after Jesse's overjoyed enthusiasm at the prospect of Lake helping him out,
Yes!
Lake can't hold back a small smile of her own. Jess even apologizes because he's aware his rambunctious demeanor annoys Lake.
Sorry.
But in this moment, she can't help but be appreciative that somebody values her. The fond moment is short-lived as Lake finds out Jesse's number one up since he boarded the train, but I'm gonna end the review on this image. Look at these two dumb goofs on the cusp of a new friendship. Adorable. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Twitch, and support me on Patreon if you want to help me make more videos. And I'll see you next time.